Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to take a stack of dense, often horrifying source material and give you the absolute, essential truth about one of the most socially explosive and deeply suppressed cases of Victorian London, the Ebury Street murder.
This is a deep dive that really operates on two parallel tracks. On the surface, you have the brutal murder of a respected gentleman, a man named Leighton Duff, in the grimy heart of the St. Giles slum.
And at the exact same time, there's this relentless, almost underground investigation into escalating sadistic violence against poor women in the nearby Seven Dials district.
Yeah, we're going far beyond the initial police reports here.
Our goal is to dissect the shocking connections between these two worlds, to uncover the true horrific identities of the perpetrators, and, most crucially, reveal the terrible secret held by the victim's son, Rhys Duff.
And it's a secret so antithetical to 1850s society that it really threatened to bring down the entire social structure.
It's a journey into hypocrisy, class divide, and the profound silence of shame.
Absolutely. We need to understand not just who committed the violence, but why that violence was deemed, unthinkable when it crossed certain class boundaries. So let's unpack this, beginning precisely where the story started, in the shadows of London's greatest contrast.
We start in the bitter cold of a London night in the mid-1850s. Our investigator is a man named Evan. He's about 5 years into his service.
Right. He joined the police force around 1855, which is important because Britain at the time is deeply distracted by the ongoing Crimean War.
And he's called out to a place called Water Lane in St. Giles.
The setting is just.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crucial to understanding this. Water Lane is described in our sources as a notorious slum. We're talking grimy walls, open gutters running with filth. It's the worst of the worst.
But it's not in the middle of nowhere. This is the key. This concentrated degradation is, and this is a quote, only a stone's throw from Regent Street.
And that proximity is everything. It's the central contradiction of Victorian society, isn't it?
It really is. 50 yards away, you can hear the muffled rumble of expensive carriage wheels. It's the sound of opulence, of civilization.
But right here, where Evan is standing, there's just darkness, a dangerous silence, and this single weak lamppost that is so isolated and useless that it gleams, quote, balefully like a lost moon.
It's a powerful image.
It is. So Evan steps from this world of relative order into a world of primal chaos. He's described as a steady, professional man. He's honest, he's perceptive, but he lacks the raw, intuitive speed of a man like William Monk.
And he's cold, he's shaking, and he immediately finds two men down on the cobbles.
The first, the older man, is deceased. This is Leighton Duff, a man in his middle 50s.
And his clothes, even though they're torn and stained by the filth of the gutter, they're instantly recognizable as being of excellent quality.
So the initial clues just scream robbery, a simple, high-risk street robbery.
Absolutely. His watch and chain are gone. His buttonhole is ripped. That's the classic sign of someone grabbing valuable jewelry off a person.
Right. But even before the medical examination, the local constable, a PC Schatz, he kind of introduces the systemic cynicism of the Metropolitan Police.
He doesn't question the robbery itself. He questions the victim.
Exactly. He asks, what possible reason could a gent have for being in this exact location? It's a poorly utilitarian question.
If the gentleman was looking for a casual female companionship, the better, safer, and maybe more discreet options.
The tarts and dolly mops, as he puts it.
Right. They were available a mile west in Haymarket. St. Giles was known for desperate acts, not for discreet liaisons.
So this immediately suggests something is off-kilter about Duff's purpose for being there.
So if it wasn't the mainstream sex trade, Evan runs through this whole catalog of London's dark underbelly in his mind.
All the other reasons a gentleman might risk St. Giles.
Slummin', which was this grotesque pastime for the wealthy, or maybe cheap women who are often starving girls, or dealings with moneylenders, card sharps, fencing stolen goods.
Whatever it was, Leighton Duff was actively courting danger. And he was doing it while conspicuously wearing a gold watch. It just doesn't add up.
Which brings us to the second man on the ground.
This is Rhys Duff, the son. Barely 20 years old, he's been badly beaten, and at first he seems lifeless, just cold and stiff. But he's alive.
And Evan, overcoming his own chilling discomfort, he's shown to be truly professional and empathetic here.
Yes, the source mentions the sheer difficulty he has forcing himself to take off his own heavy coat to tuck it around the young man. It's a small act, but it says a lot.
So the scene itself asks the first great question of this deep dive. Was this merely a random, desperate robbery that just went drastically wrong?
And Evan has to start his investigation right then and there in the slum. He begins his due diligence, working the streets, trying to find anyone who saw anything.
He goes up and down these rotting stairs into single rooms where poverty has just crushed entire families together.
Or into cellars where pale-faced young prostitutes conduct their business. It's a grim picture of industrial London.
And we see the human cost. He questions a match factory worker, Daisy Mott, a woman whose pallor speaks to her constant exposure to industrial poison.
Risking that horrible necrosis of the bone, phossy jaw from the phosphorus.
He talks to an old Briggs and others, but the result is always the same.
Universal silence.
Zero reliable witnesses. The fear is it's palpable.
The residents of Water Lane were, and I'm quoting here, more afraid of the perpetrators or of their peers than of the police.
They weren't going to step forward, not to betray their community, and certainly not to risk the retaliation that comes from revealing the identity of men capable of this level of brutality.
And this silence is the first systemic roadblock Evan faces.
Okay, so let's pivot from the visible scene to the invisible evidence. This is the medical findings, which just completely derail the initial assumption of a simple robbery.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Dr. Riley, the medical examiner, he paints a picture of pure, almost psychotic rage.
Dr. Riley's findings are chilling. Leighton Duff was not killed by a single fatal blow or a weapon. He was, quote, beaten to death.
And the murder weapon
with solely fists and boots only. He died of internal hemorrhage and ruptured organs. It means he was pummeled until his insides literally gave way.
What about the head injury? I mean, he fell on the cobble.
Just a concussion. It wouldn't have been a fatal injury. The real damage was all below the neck, which confirms an attack fueled by this immense, maybe indiscriminate violence.
This level of pure physical violence, it had to be more than one casual street thug looking for a watch.
Riley confirmed it. To inflict that kind of damage on Duff alone, he estimated more than one assailant.
And that's not even factoring in his son, Rhys, who's young and strong.
Exactly. Factoring Rhys in as well, Riley concluded it would have required, and this is his assessment, 2 assailants who were both big and well used to violence, or possibly even 3, or else again 2 complete lunatics.
It was overkill.
Total overkill. It suggests a personal vendetta or some kind of frenzied state.
But the truly crucial piece of evidence, the thing that tells Evan this was a desperate fight, not just a one-sided assault.
It's the blood evidence. There was a significant amount of blood at the scene, far more than Leighton Duff's own injuries could account for.
And it was different.
It was darker and wetter on the exterior of Duff's clothing.
Yeah.
It had barely soaked through to the inside.
So it wasn't his blood.
This is the smoking gun. It confirmed that someone else, one or more of the attackers, was pretty badly hurt. This meant the men they were looking for were injured, and they were fighting desperately to keep a secret.
So the investigation shifts dramatically from the gutters of St. Giles to the highly respectable Ebury Street.
Right. The deceased is identified. The clothes are confirmed by the family tailor, Mr. Jiggs. And suddenly we're dealing with the upper middle class.
Evan meets Sylvestra Duff, the widow, and she is the picture of, well, puzzled grief.
She confirms her husband Leighton was highly respected, a man who could perceive both opportunities and dangers. She just cannot fathom why he would have been in St. Giles.
But she does provide the first small crack in that respectable facade.
She confirms that Leighton and Rhys had a heated disagreement, a quarrel, right before they left the house that night.
And what was it about?
She claimed it was about the female company Rhys chose to keep. She implies Rhys was just seeking some casual entertainment and that Leighton was chasing after him, in parental indignation.
But she says the quarrel was trivial.
Which immediately raises red flags for Evan. Why would a man respected enough to perceive opportunities and dangers follow his son into the most dangerous slum in London while wearing a gold watch? It makes no sense.
Evan's suspicion is that the father followed the son, caught him doing something much more than trivial, and was killed in the struggle.
Right, but Sylvestra is either ignorant of the truth or she's deliberately concealing the depth of their conflict.
Regardless, Rhys is now home, he's suffering, and he's unable to speak. He's the only witness, and he's silenced by trauma.
And this introduces one of the most vital figures in this entire deep dive, Miss Hester Latterly.
She's a nurse, hired on the recommendation of the family physician, Dr. Corden Wade.
And her credentials are gold standard. She served in the Crimea alongside Florence Nightingale.
Which is a critical background detail.
It's everything. Because It means she's experienced in treating young men who have suffered profound psychological and physical trauma in mortal combat. That's a perspective very few other nurses could possibly offer.
And she's not just a caregiver. She's a woman who fought for her personal freedom.
Yeah, after her father's financial ruin, she gained her independence. And she views this difficult case as preferable to the one she just left.
The elderly and extremely trying lady whose ailments were basically boredom.
Exactly. For Hester, the exhilarating freedom and responsibility she earned in the Crimea are far more valuable than the suffocating safety offered by, depending on her kind but, well, controlling brother.
Her professional life, as the sources show, is deeply intertwined with a very critical circle of people.
Yes, she relies on the legal brilliance of the barrister Sir Oliver Rathbone, and she has this fiercely complicated, volatile relationship with the private investigator William Monk.
Let's just delve into that dynamic for a second because it's important context for what comes next. What's the current state of the Monk and Hester connection?
It's defined by mutual respect and profound frustration. She admires his courage, his intelligence, his fierce loyalty to justice.
And his unwavering ability to face dreadful truths without the hypocrisy that's so common to their class.
Right. But she abhors his deep streak of cruelty and his arrogance, particularly his terrible judgment when it comes to women.
The sources highlight his recent attraction to the Countess Evelyn von Seidlitz as the perfect example of his blindness.
Oh, yes. Monk was completely captivated by this extremely shallow and utterly selfish woman during a trip abroad. Hester saw through her instantly, which Monk just dismissed.
And their last quarrel was particularly brutal.
It was. Monk essentially attacked her character. He called her autocratic and claimed that while she knew how to reform incompetence, she had, and I'm quoting, no idea how to live like an ordinary woman, how to laugh or cry.
Wow.
And he concluded that her admirable qualities were, quote, personally unattractive.
That is a stunningly cruel blow to deliver to someone you respect.
It is. And this tension shows us that Hester values her independence above all else, and Monk, for all his brilliance, still judges women by these very restrictive social standards.
This complexity, Hester's commitment to truth versus Monk's personal blind spots, it really becomes the ethical framework for the entire investigation.
Absolutely does.
So back in Ebury Street, Hester is nursing Rhys. He's recovering physically, but he remains psychologically shattered.
He's suffering from aphasia, the loss of speech caused by the shock, but he is conscious. He's aware.
And Hester works tirelessly. She tells him stories of young men in the Crimea, and she sees a flicker of response. The beginning of a smile touches his mouth.
The problem is the level of his psychological agony. His nightmares are terrifying. He is agonized with terror, hysterical, trying over and over to scream, but his voice just will not come out.
And Dr. Wade has issued a strict medical mandate. He cannot be disturbed.
Right. Any questioning, any further stress, could cause severe physical damage. It could possibly reopen those serious internal injuries that Dr. Riley found.
Which effectively shields Rhys from Evan's investigation. He becomes a silent witness under armed guard.
But Hester starts to observe troubling behavior that suggests something far deeper than just grief or shock.
She notes these moments of immense psychological pain and even hostility.
Yes. Rhys violently pulls away when she tries to apply salve to his broken skin. And more disturbingly, he physically recoils and turns away from his own mother, Sylvestra, when she tries to comfort him.
Hester initially tries to process this through her Crimean experience. She connects it to the shame of survival.
The guilt that soldiers felt when their comrades died.
Or maybe just guilt over his father's death if he felt he could have stopped the attack.
But Sylvestra is baffled and deeply hurt by her son's profound, almost vicious rejection. The silence isn't just a symptom. It's an impenetrable shield of shame.
So while Evan is focused on the complexities of the Ebury Street family, William Monk is consumed by his parallel case in Seven Dials.
A different but equally notorious slum. He's working as a private agent, and he's been hired by a sweatshop owner named Vida Hopgood.
And Monk's clients here are the completely invisible people of society.
Exactly. The victims are not professional prostitutes. Vida explains that professional women are protected by their pimps. They are merchandise, too valuable to risk.
Monk's victims are amateur prostitutes.
They're factory and sweatshop women, like Nellie West, Betty, Carrie Barker, Dot McRae. They're forced into selling themselves occasionally because they need a little more now and again just to avoid absolute starvation.
And Vida details this grim escalation of the violence that's being inflicted upon these women.
It started with men cheating them out of their small earnings. It quickly moved to rape, even when the woman had initially agreed to the encounter. But then, it escalated into something far more extreme.
Targeted, sadistic brutality.
Yes, we are talking about severe beatings, broken bones, loss of teeth, being kicked into insensibility. Vida reports 7 known victims, and she stresses that this is completely outside the familiar troubles of their life.
And the sources emphasize that this violence yields no profit. This is key. It's not about stealing a watch.
It's about control and sadism, and Monk understands this immediately.
He takes this horrific pattern to Evan, seeking police assistance, but he runs straight into the brick wall of institutional cynicism, the systemic failure of the police system.
The police attitude, Evan admits, is rooted in the belief that a raped woman must somehow have deserved it.
And Evan, while he's honest, he admits the sad legal reality of the day.
He says that even if Monk finds the men, a prosecution would be nearly impossible because no court would believe that women what sells themselves deserves what they get. Society protected itself by assuming that virtue and innocence only applied to women who never strayed from the prescribed path.
And this is where Monk's inherent passion for justice, despite all his flaws, just explodes.
He confronts Evan. He points out that even if you accepted the monstrous idea that they deserved rape, which Monk clearly rejects, no human being deserves to be beaten senseless, to have their teeth knocked out or their ribs broken.
Monk is absolutely furious.
Because he recognizes the sheer pointlessness and cruelty of it all. This violence is being perpetrated purely for sport by men who view these women as utterly disposable.
So Monk begins to gather details about the perpetrators,
who the victims describe as well-bred, well-off men from up west. These were not the local thugs.
And there are 2 specific clues that begin to weave the Seven Dials case into the St. Giles murder. First, the appearance.
The attackers were young, smooth-skinned, and they lacked the whiskers or the rough look of working-class men.
And second, a crucial sensory detail.
Yes, noted by a victim named Bella Green. She said one man smelled like some mink odd, sharper, cleaner, like something alcoholic, but definitely not cheap gin or beer.
So cologne, expensive spirits.
Or a specific type of cleaning preparation only used by the wealthy, something distinctive.
And then Monk makes the leap. The random violence suddenly stopped in 7 Dials.
His gut tells him the perpetrators didn't just retire, they moved their hunting ground. Maybe the Dials became too hot, or maybe they just sought new, more varied thrills.
So his strategy changes. He starts tracking the transport.
He begins questioning cabbies and street vendors, looking for wealthy men being dropped off in or near St. Giles. He's looking for men who were dirty after rolling on the cobbles, men who were elated, touched with both victory and fear.
He's convinced these men are carrying the physical and psychological marks of their violent sport.
And this entire investigation is happening against the grim backdrop of Monk's own professional life. Specifically, his venomous rivalry with his former superior, Runcorn.
Right, that conflict just poisons the whole police atmosphere.
Runcorn's contempt for Monk is absolute. He views Monk's shift to private investigation, especially taking cases for prostitutes, as proof that Monk has come right down in the world and lost his wits.
It's not just professional, it's personal and profoundly bitter.
It is. And Monk's own relationship with his past is unstable because of his memory loss. He has these confusing, fragmented flashes of memory.
Crawling through sewers, fighting side by side with a younger Runcorn.
Exactly. These glimpses hint that their relationship was once one of deep comradeship and trust.
But the full, devastating truth of Runcorn's hatred is revealed later.
And it defines the atmosphere Monk is working in now. Runcorn's grudge stems from a severe betrayal years ago. During a raid on a brothel, Monk dropped him right in it, causing Runcorn to make a public fool of himself.
And that single act cost him everything.
It cost him his much-desired promotion and his fiancée, whose father was disgraced by being caught in the raid. So Runcorn's hatred is not just rivalry. It is a deep, agonizing, life-altering sense of betrayal.
So you have Monk fighting this private war against an internal enemy, Runcorn, an institutional enemy in police apathy, and a social enemy in these sadistic gentlemen.
All while Evan is struggling to make sense of the high society murder. And it's against this backdrop of pervasive cynicism and personal bitterness that the 2 cases finally collide.
Evan, still operating under the assumption that Leighton Duff was the righteous father, continues to suspect Rhys's friends.
The Duke Kynaston circle. He thinks they must be complicit in the whoring and the escalating violence.
So she develops a theory.
His theory is that Leighton followed Rhys, caught his son and his friends in the middle of a criminal act, and was killed in the struggle to protect their secret lifestyle.
Which would make Rhys a murderer protecting his own depravity.
And this theory gains terrifying traction when Monk provides the crucial piece of evidence from the Dials case.
Monk finally finds a victim of rape and beating who confirms she was assaulted just off Water Lane, the exact area of the Duff murder moments before the time the Duffs were attacked.
And critically, this victim confirms the involvement of 3 men.
Which matches Dr. Riley's assessment of the brutality needed.
So the inescapable conclusion for Evan is now cemented. Rhys must have been one of the men involved in the escalating violence.
So Rhys's horror, his silence, his shame, it must stem from being a parasite, killing his father when Leighton tried to stop them.
The police theory is now locked in. Rhys Duff killed his father to protect his secret life as a violent rapist.
And the moment of confrontation is seismic. Monk and Evan arrive at Ebury Street to deliver the formal blow. They confront Sylvestra and Hester in the library.
The authority of the state arrives via the quiet professionalism of Evan and the determined fury of Monk. And Monk makes the shocking charge. "We have come to arrest Rhys Duff for the murder of his father, Leighton Duff."
The implied charge being murder committed during the commission of another violent crime.
Rhys's reaction in the dock is deeply confusing to the investigators.
He denies using prostitutes, shaking his head sharply in denial.
But then he immediately closes his eyes, weeping, rigid with fear. His behavior screams guilt, and yet his denial is immediate and absolute.
Hester's medical training kicks in instantly. She steps forward and uses Dr. Wade's earlier instruction as a shield.
She insists Rhys is too ill to be moved. She cites the risk of reopening his internal injuries if he suffers another hysterical fit.
And Evan has no choice but to respect the medical warning.
Which leads to Rhys being held under house arrest rather than being dragged off to Newgate Prison.
So the legal drama begins. Hester, despite her confusion and potential belief in Rhys's guilt, insists that Sylvestra hire the best possible barrister.
Sir Oliver Rathbone.
Known for his brilliant advocacy and keen mind. He agrees to take the case, partly swayed by Hester's quiet conviction and his professional history with Monk.
But Rhys still cannot speak to his own defense. He sticks only to the denial that he was even in St. Giles that night.
So given the weight of the physical evidence Leighton Duff killed at the site of the rapes, what is Rathbone's only viable initial defense strategy?
Rathbone realizes they can't deny the location or the violence. The only path away from the gallows is to plead insanity.
To prove the crime was so exceptionally brutal, so bestial, that Rhys's actions must have been driven by a temporary loss of reason.
Dr. Wade supports this argument. He states the sheer frenzy required to beat a man to death suggested that the balance of Rhys's mind has been affected. It's an attempt to reduce the charge from premeditated murder to a crime committed in a state of madness.
But Monk, despite believing he is defending a spoiled, violent young man, is bound by his promise to Hester.
He continues to look for mitigating circumstances, fueled by his own professional honor.
So Monk is now in this painful conflict. He despises the violence Rhys is accused of, yet he has to diligently pursue the truth. And the first crack he finds is Rhys's verified alibi for one specific, brutal rape.
This is a critical technicality. Monk meticulously verifies Rhys's whereabouts on the night of an earlier brutal rape, the night before Christmas Eve.
And what does he find?
Rhys was conclusively proven to be at the Coniston House until 2 a.m., having a scholarly discussion about Egyptology, specifically Belzoni and the Rosetta Stone, with Fidelis and Arthur Kynaston. He could not have committed that specific earlier assault.
So that proves Rhys isn't a wholesale participant in every attack, but the brutal high society rape still happened. If Rhys was alibied out, who is the heavy attacker described by the victims?
Monk shifts his focus back to the cabbies, searching for discrepancies on that specific Christmas Eve night. And here comes the terrifying revelation that flips the entire investigation on its head.
He finds a cabbie who identifies the deceased, Leighton Duff, from a picture.
The father.
Yes. The cabbie had seen Duff that night after the confirmed time of the alibied rape, looking rough, real rough, with blood on his face, quote, like he just won some mink.
My God. So Leighton Duff was not the righteous father intervening in his son's depravity.
No. Leighton Duff was one of the rapists.
Yeah, and the new motive just explodes into clarity. Leighton Duff wasn't pursuing his son in righteous indignation.
He was a participant in the sadistic ring, potentially along with Rhys's friends. The confrontation in St. Giles wasn't over his son's activities.
But possibly because Rhys tried to stop them or refused to join them or threatened to expose them.
Monk realizes the depth of their initial analytical error. The physical evidence of the desperate fight, that darker, wetter blood on Duff's exterior clothing, it now suggests something else entirely.
That Leighton Duff was killed not by street thugs, but by his own accomplices, Kynaston, Wade, or perhaps even Rhys defending himself after Duff turned on his son, or the accomplices turned on Duff to maintain the secrecy of their depraved sport.
Armed with the truth that the father was the aggressor, the trial begins.
Rathbone immediately uses the alibi evidence to pivot. He argues that the true assailants were still at large, and that Rhys could not possibly be the central, constant perpetrator of the Dial's violence.
His courtroom strategy becomes devastatingly effective.
He seeks to maximize the horror of the crimes, to prove the insanity defense. He forces the victims of the rapes, women with broken teeth and bruised faces, to testify to the sheer, unmotivated brutality.
He's showing the court that this was not a simple murder. This was a manifestation of pure sadistic evil.
And this testimony is emotionally brutal. During the account of the last St. Giles victim, who describes the heavy attacker and that strange, sharp scent, Rhys, who has been rigid and silent in the dock, finally breaks.
He collapses in a violent seizure or fit.
He's carried down to a cell, and Hester rushes to his side. And this is the breaking point for the silent witness.
This is Hester's moment of horrifying realization. She observes Rhys's immense distress and shame, noting that it is beyond reason or comfort.
It mirrors the profound total violation and paralysis she saw in traumatized soldiers during the darkest hours of the Crimea.
The aha moment comes when she connects the psychological trauma to the physical. The truth, she realizes, must be something society deems unthinkable.
She asks the warder to leave, citing necessary privacy before Dr. Wade arrives, and then she performs a physical examination.
Specifically, examining him below the waist injuries that Dr. Wade had previously concealed during the initial examination due to the perceived need for modesty for a gentleman.
And what she finds shatters the case.
She finds extensive bruising and tearing that confirms Rhys had also been sexually assaulted. Male rape.
A crime that Victorian society, resting on the concept of the male body's inviolability, fundamentally refused to acknowledge. A man of high status could not be victimized in this way.
And this single discovery explains everything. His profound rejection of his mother, his absolute silence, his overwhelming, paralyzing shame.
The shame of the violated man of status was greater than the fear of the gallows?
Exactly. Seeing her certainty, Hester embraces him and tells him the words he needs to hear.
I know what happened to you. It's not your fault. I've known soldiers it happened to.
And that connection with a non-judgmental witness breaks the spell of silence.
And Rhys finally regains his voice in racking sobs.
And the true story is confessed.
Rhys confirms that the rapists and the men who attacked him and his father were his father, Leighton Duff, the respected family friend and headmaster, Joel Kynaston, and the family physician, Dr. Cordon Wade.
The pillars of society.
He had refused to participate in the Fennell sadistic acts, and his father and friends had brutally punished him for that refusal. His silence stemmed from total shame and humiliation, knowing he could never accuse these men or face the inevitable disbelief of the police and the courts.
The court is stunned into silence. Rathbone recalls Hester to the stand, a move that is just unprecedented.
In a silent courtroom, Hester confirms Rhys's alibi for the earlier rape and then delivers her devastating medical testimony. She describes the injuries she found on Rhys's body and links them to injuries seen in the Crimean War, proving a sexual violation had occurred.
And she names the true perpetrators: Duff, Kynaston, and Wade.
And the revelation is total societal destruction. Sylvester collapses in the courtroom. Eglantine, the wife of Dr. Wade, sits frozen in despair.
The jury, having heard the horrific testimony, the specific physical details, and the medical certainty of a decorated Crimean nurse, refuses to retire.
They immediately return a verdict of not guilty.
So what does this all mean for the structure of 1850s London?
Well, the case reveals how status, the respected gentleman, the headmaster, the physician, provided a cloak of inviolability. It shielded them from suspicion even when they were committing the most sadistic crimes.
And how society's rigid moral code, which denied the possibility of male rape, forced Rhys Duff, the high-status victim, into complete, paralyzing silence.
This shared experience of seeking justice for the invisible, whether it be exploited women in the slums or violated young men in Ebury Street, leads to a quiet, profound reconciliation between Monk and Hester.
It's built on their shared commitment to a justice that transcends class and gender.
And Monk finally realizes his own internal conflict. The arrogance and hypocrisy he despised in the dust circle, the belief that their status protected them from moral scrutiny, was something he himself had mirrored in his own past, specifically in his betrayal of Runcorn.
He finds a new ethical foundation, recognizing that justice must apply equally, regardless of the victim's social standing or the crime's social acceptability.
The true horror of the Ebury Street murder is that it was not a street crime gone wrong, nor was it a righteous confrontation. It was the result of a power struggle and a confrontation between father and son over sexual depravity, with the father being the initiator, the aggressor, and the violent ringleader.
And the sources allow us to infer that when Leighton Duff turned on Rhys in a rage, Kynaston and Wade likely committed the murder to protect their own careers and positions in society, silencing Duff before he could expose them all.
Rhys's silence was the perfect tragic fallout from that.
His horror was compounded by the fact that his attackers were the men he was supposed to trust implicitly: his father, his doctor, and his headmaster. The shame, combined with the absolute societal refusal to acknowledge male rape, meant he believed his truth was too grotesque to confess.
It left him isolated and charged with murder.
The resolution of this case proves a terrifying maxim: that the very institutions built to uphold morality and status education, medicine, the family itself, were the greatest shields for depravity.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought. Rhys Duff could only be exonerated not by proving his innocence of the crime, but by proving the utter moral bankruptcy of the highest pillars of society: the father, the doctor, and the headmaster. So we leave you with this. What are the invisible crimes we continue to ignore today simply because we cannot bear to believe the good and respected people in our own circles are capable of them?